exactly know what it's supposed to be like.
What they ought to do.
So whatever
So
we
you
say.
figure they'll just keep you up with the fashions. And if Michael Jackson's gun is a bit slimmer there and Robert Plant, then you will. Silly, it is so silly. The way manners.
Yeah. It's just that it's just something you get attached to, isn't it?
I suppose if you don't mind doing it, then so on.
Are you a film buff? Like going to movies?
Not a mad keen buff, but yeah, I look at movies. I look watching them. Not a real expert on anything, I don't think. I think of anything I'm expert on. Can you hear me sound? Can you hear me? Is this good? Loud signals, wonderful. Project, think from...
I just clicked off the microphone.
Now look at this. Look at it. See, I mean, you can't take him anywhere. I don't know. Yeah, I know.
I've never done this before yet.
He went to school for this, you know. School for mics. How long are you here for?
We're going to stay. We'll go back on Monday.
You doing anything else while you're over?
No. Sightseeing.
Just this?
Having
And
fun.
have fun. Yeah. Great. You'll probably see more of London than we ever get to look at, you know, all the sight stuff, you know. Tell you where to go for a crazy. The new film we've just done. It's called Give My Regards to Broad Street. Broad Street is a station. And it's a crazy. It's not a tourist attraction or anything. It's the station where we made the film. And it's an old English railway station. Not very inspiring at all, except that you have to just imagine us out there making the film. And it's going to be pulled down. So it's just...
Is it somewhere in London?
Yeah, it's very near. Like right next door to Liverpool Street Station. It's just a little silly offbeat. You might want to go there one evening, you know. It's
I want to see, aside from the real touristy things,
yeah.
I want to see the club scene. I want to see...
Yeah. Where have you heard about?
There's, I'm going to find out about it now.
Steve Strange's club?
I'd love
Camden.
to go there. Yeah. There's people after we're done here. Gail Sparrow, artist relations person, is going to talk to a bunch of people. And
yeah. Show you some of the places.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Steve's supposed to be one of the good ones. Steve Strange's place.
I get the impression that it's not quite as widespread as we might think it is in the United States.
It never is. Stories are all the media stories. Yeah, it's like Hollywood used to go. There was only the Whiskey a Go-Go you could ever find.
Yeah.
There was never any. And Troubadour. It's Tupelo. And yet, you know, it's Hollywood. Over here, it was Mecca.
So let's see, what are we going to talk about today? We'll talk about...
Whatever you like, mate, yeah. I'd rather not see the questions, really.
Nah.
Nothing too heavy. Keep it light.
Oh, yeah. There's so many things that you're doing today and within the last 6 months, for God's sake. That's going to take up so much time. It's great stuff. You know, some of it we know about already because we've done news stories on it.
Yeah.
But I'm just asking things that I'm curious to hear about, the things that you're doing.
That's the way to do it.
I asked if you were a film buff because obviously now you're involved in a feature-length film.
Yeah.
And where do you go? And let's see, I could use that. That's a great idea for
you look at a lot of pictures just to see what everyone's doing.
Yeah. People getting...
Not so much to nick, but to see what they're doing so as not to nick.
Quiet, please. We're off.
Been off for years.
Because films are getting really stylized in the United States. People are going back to this film noir, the detective stuff that used to be in the 40s, you know, slashes of light across the face and things like that.
Yeah.
There's the main plant.
I love all that.
We've got to shut down the whole building now.
The air conditioning?
Right, can we go then, please, Mark?
Sure. Are you having air conditioning troubles? No air conditioning troubles?
All right.
No air conditioning troubles?
Well, we've shut off the building.
Sid?
We can't do the main plant. Not our one for it.
Isn't it? Oh, all right. Right, let's go then. Nothing we can do about it.
Okay. Yeah. Since we're talking about movies, let's talk about yours. We've only heard in the United States really little bits and pieces about it. It's been described to me as,
I'm hamming it. Hello. Good evening. We haven't even said hello yet. launch right into the conversation.
We're talking with Paul McCartney here on MTV. Paul, hi, how are you?
Hiya! Okay.
Nice to see you. All I've heard about Give My Regards to Broad Street is it's a day in the life of someone like Paul McCartney.
Yeah, you know, the thing is, like, when you make a film, it's really hard to just sum it up. Even when people are reviewing it, you know, it's like when it gets to New Yorker, wacky romp with, you know, and it always comes... Ours, if I have to describe it, it's about some tapes that go missing. And I got a friend, there's a fellow who works for me in the film. I'm sort of playing myself. A fellow who works for me, and he's had a criminal record, so people suspect him of nicking the tapes. That's sort of like the idea of the film.
What's your name in the film?
Paul.
So you're playing a guy named Paul.
I'm sort of playing me, yeah, but it's like a larger...
Is your last name ever mentioned?
Pardon?
Is your last name ever mentioned?
Yeah, yeah.
As McCartney?
Yeah. So I'm really playing myself. But it's not kind of realistic. It's a little bit larger than life, a little bit how people might imagine things were. You know,
so
it's a
there's...
laugh. It's good fun.
I know it's a musical, but it's also a comedy / mystery, it sounds like.
Well, yeah, there's a story, the plot is the bit I was explaining to you. It's quite light-hearted, it's not a heavy movie.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of music in it. So those are the ingredients. But somebody said to the director of the film, I hear this is a day in the life of Paul McCartney, and he said something like, to call this a day in the life of Paul McCartney is like calling Alice in Wonderland day in the life of some little girl who meets a white rabbit. You know, there's a bit more to it than that, but it's, if you just lay out the plot, it sounds a bit bald.
It sounds a bit...
Bald.
Well,
like you under that wig.
It's showing?
Mm-hmm.
I wore this especially for you.
I know, it's just the sticky stuff. That's all right, I won't tell.
How would you describe, aside from the acting part that you're doing in the movie, how do you describe your role with the film?
Well, I wrote it, so...
You wrote the story, the screenplay?
Script, dialogue.
The whole shebang.
The whole shebang. It all started when I was coming to the studio. I've got a long drive to get to the studio. I live quite a bit outside London. And it was taking me about 2 hours to get to the studio each day, so rather than just sit there and watch the road, I started writing some stuff with an idea maybe of getting something together. And after a few more journeys, I had a bit of a germ of a script. So I finished it up and then showed it to a couple of people who said, no, don't do that, but here's one I wrote. And so I said, no, thanks. I think we could do this one. And I eventually talked to the director, who's called Peter Webb, who I'd been talking to about a couple of other things. And I showed it to him, and he said, let's do it, you know, it'll work, let's do it. So it's positive reaction and stuff, so we just got on the tracks and started making it.
Why did you decide to not direct it yourself?
It's too much hard work, directing. It's a really hard job, you know, and it's...
You've never shied away from hard work before.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you know, I'm not a director, so that's really why I didn't direct it. And having written it, you've got a lot of say if you're a writer. Well, in this relationship I had anyway. Some Hollywood writers don't have a lot of say, I know that, but Peter and I had a lot of say anyway. So, I mean, it was almost as if I was co-directing it from the writing point of view. I mean, he was actually the boss. And then in the music, I'd written most of the music too, and was going to perform most of the music, all of it, I think. So I was in there anyway. I didn't need to push myself in, my foot further in the door. I had plenty of say in the movie, and I had plenty to occupy my time, you know. So it needed somebody like a director, like you've got a producer on a record, to stand back and sort of say, well, you could do that a bit better, or this would be good.
And you're the executive producer as well for the movie, right?
Sort of. You know, it's 20th Century Fox releasing it, so it's really their movie, but we're making it for them.
And it's not all written yet, is it?
It's all written.
It is all written?
Yeah, it is all written. The music, you mean?
I got
the music
impression...
isn't all finished.
Well, I know that you're working on the soundtrack now, but I got the impression that there were some scenes, perhaps connecting scenes, maybe yet to be written. Is that not right?
No, that's not right.
So you have the entire script is completed. Is the film shot?
Yeah. The film is shot, And we're at the stage now where we're doing music. That's what I'm doing downstairs here. Today we've been doing a piece of atmosphere music for like, it's kind of like 1920s type music, you know, because it's for a background thing where there's an old man. It's actually played by Sir Alf Richardson. I think it was his last film. He did, he's just died recently. Yeah. And we were doing the background music for Ralph's scene. So it's great, you know, it's great getting into like really old-fashioned music. It's crazy.
That's you as well, right? Are you writing the incidental, the ambient?
Yeah, I'm doing the score as well with George Martin.
It's your first, too.
Great. No, I've done a score before, actually. I did one on a British film called The Family Way with Hayley Mills. Pollyanna! And but this is more a real score. There I wrote a couple of themes and George adapted them. That was George Martin too. But this, I'm more involved in this one. So if it's a flop, it's my fault.
And you're going to take the blame for it?
No.
Blame it on the director? You
No, we'll just cut this sequence and we'll put a bit in where we blame it on the director.
You mentioned that you're working on the soundtrack now, and the soundtrack will include, in terms of real songs, Paul McCartney songs, yeah. What songs will be on the soundtrack?
What songs are on it? There's about 12 songs. There's about 20 pieces of music, but a lot of that's incidental. So I don't think that'll get on the soundtrack album. There's about 12 songs, and there's some old Beatles songs, and there's some more recent songs, and there's some new ones besides. It's about four or five new ones.
When you say new, you mean new, not like Pipes of Peace. New.
And then there's a couple not new. There's a couple old. It's a mixture. The director mainly wanted the old ones because they help the story. There's things in it, you know, if I sing Yesterday, all my troubles seem so far away, and we're in a crisis in the story, then one of the other characters can lean over and say, very bloody appropriate. You know, they kind of help the plot. It all makes sense when you see it.
But you're re-recording the older songs.
Yeah, which is great. I love doing it.
How are you going to make them different?
I'd say, I mean, why should they be different? It's like everyone asks me that. You know, everyone says, you're re-recording them, so how have you made them different? It just didn't occur to me to make them different. We did one yesterday, did a new version of Long and Winding Road yesterday. And I started singing it, thinking like you know, well, I've got to make this different. But actually, everywhere I went wasn't the melody, and it wasn't places I liked. So I actually just came right back to the melodies. It's different, but it's not very different. You know,
It sounds as though you're speaking in terms of the way that you sing it.
Yeah.
But the arrangements, I would imagine. Well, I heard the Long and Winding Road. And
is that different?
Well, the sax is beautiful.
Oh, of course the sax arrangement. Yeah, it is a different arrangement. That's right. Clever, this lad. Yeah, he's a lovely sax player, Dick Morrissey. It's great.
Now, I would imagine then you and George have worked out different arrangements for
some of the other songs. Yeah, they're different. But they're not as different as the tempo changes and the whole thing is different. They're basically the same song, just treated in a different way. They sound all right, though, you know.
I guess I'm trying to just get a feel for what they are going to be like, and more modern.
Well, I mean, it works out like, why re-record them? Because I like the songs, is one. You see, the thing is, that's the thing. You first of all, you make your record, which is a hit, let's say of Here, There and Everywhere, or something, and we did the Beatle record with that. That's the last time you ever do that song. And it's silly, that's silly now. You know, if it's a good song, you shouldn't just make a record of it and leave it for the rest of your life. There's no harm in coming back to it. And when you do come back to it, unlike, say, Dylan, you know, who used to kind of really come back to it and totally reggae it or something, you know, just because I can see that. Mine, it didn't seem to work doing anything like that. You know, I needed to leave them somewhere near where they were. And it seemed like it works. There'll be critics who will say you shouldn't have done it and everything, but there's
I was going to ask you about that. You got to be thinking about the inevitable comparisons. That doesn't concern you, apparently.
Well, you know, if I let it concern me, it concerns me about critics and stuff. But the truth of the matter is, you should really just get on with what you do, try and do it well, and forget the critics. Because, you know, they don't like everything. They can be wrong, they can be right. I heard a story about some painter called Dante Gabriel Rossetti, He's a famous painter and stuff, 100 years ago or something, I think, roughly that. And he got so wound up in critics that he got a great review, and wow. Then he got a really bad review from the Times of London. He committed suicide. So, I mean, you know, if criticism can have that kind of effect on an artist, I don't even want to know, you know. I just know there's going to be people who'll slag it off. There's going to be people who'll like it. All we've tried to do is make a movie that you can go to the cinema, spend your money, and come out thinking, well, I didn't get cheated. I had a good time tonight. And if it does that, that'll be enough for me. It doesn't have to be deep and heavy and explain the entire meaning of the universe.
Yeah, I usually walk out of those movies. Oh, let's go see a fun movie now.
Well, that's what I mean, you know. The kind of things I like are all that kind of stuff, you know, just punter movies.
Haley Mills.
Jedi and stuff. No, you know.
So there's not going to be any spacey stuff in it?
There's no spacey stuff. No, we had to kind of make a decision at the beginning, really, thinking, okay, we're going to make a film. Well, these days, you've got to make Jedi or Close Encounters or Raiders. It's got to be massive and really big. The script wasn't like that. The script isn't that kind of movie at all, and no matter what we did to it, we couldn't really have made it into that. So we had to make a decision early on that we weren't going to go that way. It wasn't going to be a multi special effects movie.
Right.
That's another film. You know, one day might do that one and get involved in that. But that's Spielberg, you know, that's the lads, you know, that's their thing. And I think it'd just be silly to try and ape them, you know. They're so good at it. That ours is more of a kind of English music movie, really. But it's a film rather than just a musical, like a concept thing. You know, it's a story movie. It includes...
It sounds to me, the way that you're describing it, is you started off, as you say, with the story, and the songs help the story along rather than the other way around.
Well, in fact, when I wrote it, I just put in so-and-so and so-and-so, and then he walks over to the piano, music 3. You know, and we didn't know what songs were going to go in. I left it just music 1 to 10. So then I got with the director, and yeah, he's used some of them to help the plot. Some of them because it needs an up moment there or whatever, you know. I think it works okay, though, you know, I think it's a good film.
How soon will we see it? In the
Summer
United States?
84. Summer 84, yeah.
So it's a ways off.
Yeah.
And the soundtrack at the same time?
Yeah, a couple of months before that or whatever.
What about your new project, or the one that's just released anyway, in the United States, Pipes of Peace?
Yeah.
I got to compliment you, first of all, not only on a great record, but on optimism.
Well,
we need it.
Yeah, I mean...
It's great.
I'm quite optimistic, I don't know, you know, really. And if I'm not, then it's good to be optimistic. I mean, even if you're feeling low, you know, you need a bit of that.
It seems as though the obvious, you have Pipes of Peace, we had Tug of War, we have Opposites, we have Black and White, we have Ebony and Ivory, we have so many references. Is there, in your mind, some sort of relationship between the two records?
Yeah, I'm in a rut. No, seriously. What it is,
Seriously, folks.
What it is really is the Tug of War, the theme behind it came to, as we were doing it and stuff, came to be about the struggle of opposites. Boy and a girl. They've got to live together, and yet they're very different animals. And it's very difficult, you know, divorce and all the marriage and all this sort of stuff. Parents, children. Really sort of similar, but there's always this crazy on-off, yeah, no, hate, love. There's a big struggle kind of going on, it seems, you know, and even in science and physics and everything, there's always this big struggle. So that was what Tug of War was about, you know, what is all this about? So he was posing the question, Tug of War. And Pipes of Peace was nearly going to be Tug of War Part 2, but we decided that the new material was like giving an answer to that question, you know, what do you do about this eternal struggle? And the idea was peace and love, brother. It's an old idea, but I couldn't find any other answer. It's the straight old answer, you know, that in love things seem to just work out. Kind of magic.
You know, people believe it when you say it, too.
Well, I believe it. That's the way I feel. I mean, I know you can wake up one day and you really say, oh, you know, because people think, well, you don't have moods, you know, you're so well off or whatever. But like everyone, you do. And what helps you out of those, you know? It's your positive, it's your optimism and your belief and faith or whatever it is, you know, in someone you love or in something you love. And So that's really what this album's about?
So there is this sort of a subtle relationship between the two, an answer.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, it really is Tug of War Part 2. It's the answer to Tug of War.
George Martin was in the MTV studios a while back, and he had mentioned that there was, you thought of Tug of War as a double album initially.
Yeah.
Now, the things that have wound up on Pipes of Peace, were any of those ideas that you held from Tug of War that didn't go on there?
Yeah. There were a couple of tracks that weren't finished when we did Tug of War.
For example?
Average Person. There's one called Average Person that was going to be the second track on Tug of War, but it just didn't work. It, you know, we had an idea thing and so. Keep Undercover. There's another one called Keep Undercover. That one was going to be on Tug of War. But again, it didn't fit. The mood was wrong, you know. Found that these ones all fitted with this another kind of mood, you know, a bit more optimistic mood.
There seems to, Keep Undercover is one of the things that it's like, well, what can we do about the situation out there? Well, we can
hide. You know, some kind of an answer in it.
You have a couple of great answers on there. Pipes of Peace also talks about another answer. Think about what you can do about it.
Well, I say that's the idea of the album, you know, is trying to find answers to the kind of day-to-day problems you're involved in, you know. I mean, that's it on one level. That's it if we're going to analyse it and be critics and stuff. On another level, it's just a record. It's a bit of music, and you put it on, and if it makes you feel good, then you're great. It's great. You know, I mean, it's only rock and roll.
We like it. There's one person that you've decided to collaborate with once again on this record, and that's
Michael.
Michael.
Yeah.
Why again for Michael Jackson? Why did you decide to work with him again?
Oh, again, it's just the way it all worked out, you know. Michael originally fancied writing some stuff with me, and I thought it was a good idea. So he came over here to England, and we just hung out for a little while and got to know each other a bit, and ended up writing 2 songs that are the 2 on this album. And then he went and did his own album, Thriller, which he wrote Girl Is Mine. And so I was on that. Those are the only 3 things we've done. So these are the 2 we wrote together, Say, Say, Say and The Man.
It sounds to me as though you have so much fun singing with him.
Yeah, I do. Well, he's great, Michael. I mean, he's a great fella. I mean, I don't know if you've met him and stuff. He's always, see, Mike, look, plugging you, see? You need it. But he's a nice fella, you know. He's a good fella to be around, and he's talented.
Yeah.
And so, what more do you want?
I feel like I'm imagining you and he in the studio together singing with grins on your faces.
Yeah, we have a laugh, you know. Sure.
He doesn't wind up in the movie, of course.
Michael's not in the movie, no.
And you also wound up doing a video with Michael.
Yeah.
Say, 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 which we will premiere.
Yeah.
And was it Michael who led you to Bob Giraldi to do the video?
Sort of, yeah. I wanted to work with someone that Michael would be comfortable with. You know, because sometimes you can get a brainwave and think, so-and-so would be great. Fellini, wow. Yeah. Now, he would be great. But, I mean, you can think, and you get him, and he agrees to do it. But some of the chemistry can go wrong. So I knew Bob had worked with Michael. Bob Giraldi, who directed it, had worked with Michael. And so I thought, and I liked his work. I wanted to work with him. So it seemed to fit, you know.
How did you and he work together?
Bob?
Yeah. Did you?
Great. He's a good director. He just tells you what he wants. And
I was going to say, though, did you sit down and say, well, look, here's what I had in mind, Bob. What do you think? Or
in this particular instance, it was his idea. He came over and he had this feeling of Michael and I working together, which is kind of a free feeling. He wanted to communicate this sort of freedom of, like, you know, Easy Rider, you know, get out. So it was his idea to do this kind of Butch Cassidy and Sundance, this sort of Sting idea, and to make it a period thing. And I loved it, you know. And he's a great director, Bob. You know, he just tells you what to do, and you just get on with it.
It seems like there's a lot of you in there, though. That's those stage sequences when you're the clowns and the.
Well, you know, I've got to busk all that stuff because I'm not really a dancer, you know. Like, and we had Jeff, choreographer, who did Flashdance. And he was just hitting me with it. He was just saying, right, you know, we get us set up for a shot, and he'd say, right, so what I want you to do, 2, 3, boom, boom, 3 to the left and 2 to the right, pull this thing out here and go, oh yeah, great, you know. Can I have 2 weeks' notice in writing? But we managed to busk our way through it and stuff, you know. So I suppose that puts a bit of me in it, you know, all that silly stuff. It was great though. We did it in 3 days, you know, out in California, and it was a blast doing it.
Is there going to be more? Do we see more from Pipes of Peace in video?
Yeah, I think so. We haven't done any more yet, but I think we will.
How do you feel about making video now? When you look at it, do you feel like, well, I got to think, when I look back at like a Strawberry Fields, I mean, I got to think that you thought, wow, we're going to do this wild thing. It's going to blow everybody's mind. How do you compare, if you could, how you feel about it today as opposed to then?
Well, I mean, you know, generally everything isn't as far out today as it was then. I suppose, you know, we were just discovering far out. You know, so that, I mean, in that case, Strawberry Fields, I know how it happened. We'd be in a club kind of thing, and we'd meet some Swedish director who was this fellow we used to know, and he was saying, I've got some great ideas, you know, I want to do this, I'll sit up in a tree and a psychedelic and so on. I said, yeah, it sounds great. So, hey, man, gotta do it. And the white horses and all that. And it was the mood of the times, you know, was very crazy. And I say we were discovering crazy. We did a lot of that, and now the mood is more what it used to be before that. The cycles come around again, you know. It's a little bit more professional and serious these days.
Certainly in the style, but and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you look at it like, well, this is a great way to promote the record, let's do a video?
Well, I mean, you look at it, you've got to look at it like that, whoever you are and whatever it is, you know, because that's what it is. Whether you like it or not, Strawberry Fields was that. But no, I don't. That's not the way I get motivated, you know. I just think I'm going to be in something here, and I get to act, and I get to sing, and I've got to do that, and I've got to do that. And what are the clothes like? And you just get involved in it, you know. And I like performing and acting and stuff. It's, I suppose I was a bit of a ham as a kid, you know. It never leaves you. And Michael's the same. He's a regular ham. He's a ham, as Cal would say. He's a ham. But, you know, so I just like doing all that kind of stuff. So I get into it on that level rather than, well, we've got to do another promotional thing. I just like the opportunity to be in a film.
You were hamming it up in the old days, too, then when the first, I mean, forget way before Strawberry Fields, when you were just doing leaps in the air and stuff.
Terrible. Well, that's the photographers, you know, they say, we've got a great idea for a shot, jump in the air. Okay.
Far out. Right.
Far out.
Great, we'll love it. You said that there are going to be more, hopefully more, from Pipes of Peace. Do you have in mind what they may be, who you may work with at this point?
No.
No?
In a word, no.
Is that pretty much
It's the old one-word answer.
Do you think that video for you is a way to preclude touring? Is it a way that will keep you off the road? We'll send the video out instead of me and the band?
Not really. No, really. This year I've been doing the film that we've been making, Broad Street. So I couldn't have toured anyway. Wouldn't have just had any time for it. And now I'm doing the album. Been doing Pipes of Peace, and already I'm getting into the Broad Street album now. Because having to do all the score. So in truth, I just haven't had any time to do it. It's not that I don't want to tour. It just hasn't happened. You know, it has to grab you. I mean, early days you used to just automatically tour every autumn. You know, that was the basic requirement. At least once a year. But with the Beatles, we got to a point where we got fed up. We thought we were getting jaded just going out and touring and promoting. There's a way of promoting. You know, that's the big promotion, really. In fact, you know, if you were just looking to promote it, you would tour, because that's better than sending a video out. But it just hasn't come around to it this year. So I've been doing other stuff. So maybe soon I'll feel like touring again.
You don't feel sort of...
It's tough, though, touring. You know, you've got to actually get out there. I mean, see, the thing is, I've got 4 kids now, and that does make a difference. You know, when I was touring with the Beatles, I was bachelor and just, yeah, let's go. You know, now some of the younger groups now will be doing that and touring, and I can get into that. Yeah. That's a whole other ball game. But when you've got 4 kids, you know, and you love them, and you want to take care of them and show them a decent life, you've got to consider all that, you know. So touring isn't as easy for that reason, but I wouldn't rule it out, you know. I could well feel like touring next year and bring the kids.
That's what I was going to say. Did
Get
you
them
do
in
that
as roadies.
Carry those
Don't have
amps.
to pay them.
And they don't eat much, right? Is that what you did in '76? Did you take them on the road with you?
Yeah, took the kids, yeah.
So I know that America is certainly anxious to see you play on stage again. And you said you're a ham. Must be great to get all the friends together in the horn section on stage and
yeah, it'd be great, yeah.
And ham it up. If there's anybody that I could ask a question like this, it's you. You're a music lover, and you've been around playing it and making your own and being influenced by it. I know you've talked quite a bit at other times about how you're influenced by the other things that are happening.
Yeah.
And how do you think, how are we doing? How's rock and roll doing?
Oh, great. Music, yeah, I think it's great.
We breaking new ground? We moving forward, do you think?
I don't know. You know, I'm not an analyst. You know, I don't know.
It's all subjective anyway.
I think, like, all my favourite stuff is probably like all the R&B and the kind of Sam and Dave and all the sort of early R&B and the Motown and all that stuff.
That's what the new people seem to like, too, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you know, if it's good, it's good. If it lays, it stays, as the man said. But that's it, you know, I like lots of different kinds of music, and it just comes and goes, you know. You occasionally get periods when it all goes a little bit sickly, you know, but...
That's what I was going to say. Don't you wonder why... I listen to certainly a lot of what's coming out of England today.
Yeah.
And it sounds like...
There's some good stuff in England.
Oh, there's some wonderful stuff in England.
And you've got, I mean, all the soul stuff in America and the disco stuff.
But we're, in a strange way, looking to you here, who look to us, and we're influenced by that. And
it's great, though, isn't it? I mean, that's what I love about America and England. I mean, it's, you know, the music scene is very two-way. It did used to be one way, because we really used to look at, like, the Americans. Well, you know, so in the same way as, like, to Elvis and people like that, and before that, it was only America, really. We had one or two people over here, but nothing big. But now, you know, people look to England now as one of the sort of big music countries. That's great for us.
For some reason, British musicians have been able to interpret better than the soul stuff, better than American musicians have.
I don't know about better, you know. Some have been able to do it better, some haven't been able to do it as good. I think it all evens out in the end, you know. I think there's some really great records coming out, and there's some really great players around. And one thing I like is that a lot of the kids from who were kids about 5 or 6 years ago and really didn't know much. So a lot of it was just bashing, which is okay in its own way. It's quite exciting, but it gets a bit boring. They're now learning. They now know a few chords. They now know a bit. And they've now been in the record business long enough to know what's going on now, you know. So they're starting to produce some good stuff.
It also seemed as though that when you talk about New Wave was angry, which is great. You need a little bit of anger, I guess.
It needed it at the time.
But now they're singing, they're making some sense. They're making some positive statements, as certainly as you are.
Yeah.
And you were never the one to make the statements before.
I don't know, you know, I mean, you know, just because people are younger doesn't mean they're going to be stupid. You know, they're going to come out with great stuff just like we do.
But I'm getting a signal to wrap here, so...
Let's not.
You were the guy who wrote the love songs, traditionally. And
well, I mean, I got put in that kind of pigeonhole, but in actual fact, it wasn't just that. You know, people tend to kind of look at the Beatles and they'll say, okay, Paul was the one who wrote the love songs and, you know, Hi There, and did that one.
The Rouge.
You know, John was the hard political poet. George was, you know, the more mystical and all that. And, you know, looking at it just straightforward, that sort of is true. But really, George has also got the hard poet to him. John also had the mystic. I've also got the hard poet. I've also got the mystic. Ringo's also got the poet and all of these things. And the thing about the Beatles is we all had a bit of each other. And it comes down to black and white, you know, he was that, he was that, he was that. It's not really true. It's not black and white. It's all, it's a grey. It's all tones of greys, you know, or whatever. Any colour you like. But it's, It's tones rather than just he was that, he was that, he was that.
And certainly it's easier to say, well, he was this, he was this, he
Well,
was this, but certainly
they
if we
always
look
want to
back,
break it down. Historians always want to say he was that, he was that. But I mean, you know, I wrote plenty of rockers and did plenty of rockers with the Beatles.
And
I just became known for things like Yesterday and stuff, which I don't mind. You know, I like love songs myself.
but you also wrote one called Blackbird, which
Blackbird, yeah.
was there was a comment.
That's, yeah, I'm glad you understand it. I don't. Anyway, but I wrote like I'm Down and stuff like that, you know, which was just, that wasn't sort of love songs.
Yeah.
But I mean, the point I'm trying to make is that we all liked a bit of each. I mean, I remember one night John talking to me, and I think everyone automatically assumed he'd like the kind of hard stuff on whatever album it was. I think it might have been Rubber Soul, I think it might have been. I remember listening to a few tracks where we were just somewhere doing something. We played the cassette kind of thing. I remember him just for one tiny second saying, I probably like your tracks better. And that was it. You know, so we all got those different sides to us, you know, and if you're in a romantic mood, you'll like the love songs, no matter who you are.
Do you think
Or the other way around.
Yeah. Do you think if we assume that at least in the public eye you're being more politically active today, it seems to be the case. You're writing letters to the Queen, and you're getting benefit.
Prime Minister.
Prime Minister. Okay. That's still he's up there.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's I suppose it's political.
I'm going to ask that. It seems to me, and you correct me if I'm wrong. It seems to me that as performers become parents, that just turns them completely 180 degrees, or at least 90 anyway.
It does. I mean, not just performers, anybody. It's a big deal becoming a parent, you know. It's a good deal, but you have got to think about someone else. Unless you're going to be a bad parent, in which case you can just keep rocking, man, and just don't care. But, you know, it's a little life here growing up, and it's looking to you. And it wants some kind of sense to make out of it, because it can't make much sense out of it, you know, and it needs some kind of direction. And you've got to do that too. You can't just keep rocking and going to clubs forever. You know, that's great while you're a bachelor and everything, but as you get more aware in the world, you know, you do realize that, well, maybe if I did write a letter to this, she's only some woman after all, you know, Prime Minister, you know, she gets up, she goes to bed like everyone else, you know, she gets dreams and whatever, you know, she's not infallible. So maybe if I write a letter, there's no law says I'm not allowed to, this isn't Russia. You know, I'm allowed to say, excuse me, I think that's wrong, you know. And the only thing I really ever did was I sent a telegram to Maggie Thatcher when she wouldn't give the nurses more pay. There's a big thing over here about the nurses, and they were all going to go on strike, and hospitals are closing down. You know, like it's happening. And I wrote a thing, and I said, I think the nurses could do for you what the miners did for Ted Heath, which politically means. And well, it's just what I felt, you know. I'm not madly political, but if something seems wrong, you know, I'll write the letter.
Very good. Giving me this.
Shall we wind it up?
So let's wind it up and
see you, folks.
America's going to see you, and give my regards to Broad Street.
Great, next year, yeah.
Soon. And we can't wait to hear the soundtrack. It's been
Great.
great talking to you.
Cheers.
Nice
to see you, yeah. Okay. See you, folks. Okay?
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Should we undo?